I was the old man in Japan. While in Japan, I lived in Ota. Ota is a city within Tokyo. So let me explain. First of all, Japan has 47 prefectures, which we would call states. And the prefecture term came from the Portuguese back in the 1500s. And they're still called prefectures. There are 47 prefectures, and within prefectures are cities and towns and villages and so on. But one of the three are special prefectures. One is Osaka, and one is Kyoto, and the third one is Tokyo. Tokyo is actually a prefecture, not a city. Within Tokyo, there are 23 cities, and the largest one is Ota. Ota was formed actually in 1947 by combining Omori and Kamata, and the Omori people wanted the name Omori for their city and the new city, and the Kamata people said, no, we want Kamata, and so they settled on Ota. So, compromises everywhere. Anyway, the prefecture system came at the end of the shogunate era in the late 1800s, when during the Meiji Restoration, and they were formerly daimyo territories. Daimyos were local warlords under the shogun, and each had their own land, and those lands became the new prefectures, although there have been a lot of changes, combinations, and so on since then. So Tokyo was the old Edo during the shogunate, and is now a super city, or a super prefecture, really, of some 13 into 23 different cities. And as I said, Ota is one of those. It's in fact the biggest one. And it includes Haneda Airport, which is Tokyo's big airport. It was started in 1931, and after World War II, it was an U.S. Army Air Force base for a number of years until the occupation ended, and now is a major airport for Japan. Ota is not as famous as, say, Nihonbashi or Roppongi or Shinagawa, Shinjuku, and so on. But it's more of a residential and industrial city, but still has a lot to offer. There's Honmonji is a big temple there, and quite beautiful lands. As I said, Haneda Airport is there. There's some beautiful parks. There are many sentos, or bathhouses. There are many shrines and temples. So there's a lot to see in Ota. And it's more old-fashioned than the big downtown cities. So if you're interested in old Japan, Ota is a good place to visit. Anyway, Ota has a sister city of Salem, Massachusetts. I live next door to Salem in Marblehead, Massachusetts. Why are they sister cities? Well, back in prehistoric times, the ocean came closer to Oomori portion of Ota than it does today. And the prehistoric peoples lived off, they were hunter-gatherers, and they lived off, among other things, shellfish that they brought out of the sea. And when they were done with the shells, ate the fish and whatever, or ate the contents, they threw them in a pile. And so many, many years later, like after the Meiji Restoration began in 1870s, a man from America came to visit Japan, and he was a scientist who specialized in a particular type of seashell. And he was interested in, and he was told there are more varieties, more species in Japan. So he came to Japan to study those. And he collected many, many artifacts from Japan, things from the shogunate era, the Edo period, which were becoming rare because Japan was quickly westernizing. And but he set up a lab south of Yokohama, south of Tokyo, to study the shellfish. And one day he was riding the train from Yokohama to Tokyo. It was the first train in Japan, first railroad. And he was riding that train, and as he was going through Oomori, he saw shells sticking out of the land on the siding. He got really curious about it. So he went back with some people and started digging. He was experienced in archaeology, and he found that these were ancient discarded seashells and a lot of pottery, broken pottery, and other things from prehistoric times. Well, the Japanese had been isolated from the rest of the world for 250 years, and they knew nothing of archaeology, which developed during that time. So he began explaining what was going on in prehistoric times and discovering what life was like in those days. He even named the culture. So he became very famous as the father of architecture, of archaeology for Japan. He also taught his specialty about seashells in Tokyo University. And he also wrote some books about houses in Japan, which preserves to this day what life, or at least what houses were like in the pre-modern era. So he's very well known in Japan. Every student who goes through middle school learns about his name, which is Edward Sylvester Morse. And when he was done, he returned to America, and he returned to Salem. And in Salem, there is a museum, which at that time was called the Peabody Science Academy. And he was made the director of the academy. He donated many, many things to both the Boston Art Museum and to what's now the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem. But he was the director of that museum until he died. And he achieved many. He achieved a lot of fame as a scientist in America. So, in the late 1900s, 100 years later, Ota started to build a new museum, which is now called the Ota Folk Museum. And by folk, they mean cultural history. So, when they were doing that, they wanted to know more about Edward Sylvester Morse, so they came to Salem and met at the museum and learned what they needed to know. And so they have a nice exhibit of Morse's work in Ota. And as a result of that, the two museums became sister museums, and about 10 years later, Ota and Salem became sister cities. So that's how the sister city relationship came to be. In both cities, there is a club. In Salem, it's called the Salem Ota Cultural Exchange, and in Ota, it's called the Ota Salem Club. And each year, people from one city go to visit the other city. A group of anywhere from 5 to 15 or more people will go from one city to the other. And that's how I first got to Japan. In 2007, my wife and I joined the Salem Ota Club, now Cultural Exchange, and went on a 2-week tour of Japan, and it was fabulous. And we met a lot of people who are still friends to this day. So that's my little history of Ota and Salem. So stay tuned. Bye.